Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush video. So 6 episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, 140 through 145, all dropped yesterday, and so what I am doing is I am doing a big review video for all 6 episodes. If you are only interested in some episodes and not the others, they will all be time-stamped down below so you can skip through, and this video is basically like a 6-in-1. So if you want to hear my thoughts on all these episodes, enjoy the next, 45, 50 minutes or so. If you want to hear my thoughts on one episode, you can always skip around at your own leisure. But let's begin. I mean, these are big episodes. We are assuming this show is ending in late March. And if that's the case, it will end at 151 if it ends that final week of March. Meaning these are the first half of the remaining 12 episodes. Like, this is 50% of what very well could be the final arc. So these are big episodes, and if you need a little bit of a reminder, 139, the 11th arc, ended with our team being teleported into the past. We only knew that Yugioh and Yugioh were teleported into the past. Well, obviously we learned more as these episodes went on, but starting in 140, it's the duel between Yugioh and Rinkage. One of my favorite comedic moments of this is after a few characters have kind of reunited. We have Yugioh, we have Yugioh, we have Manabu and Neanderstar and Yugioh. And I liked the reaction to Yugioh being there, where Manabu was like, listen, we can't fully trust Yugioh, and I feel like that also plays in to the extremely rocky relationship Manabu and Yugioh have had. Not only have they dueled twice, with each of them getting a win, but obviously Manabu kind of had his meltdown moment when everybody very easily forgave Yugioh early on in season 2. So I still love that kind of like mini rivalry and tension between those two. And while Manabu says, listen, we don't know what side Yugioh is on, Yugioh then returns the favor of not really trusting or liking Manabu. When Rinkage's traps are about to go off, Yugioh grabs Yugioh, so Yugioh, instead of grabbing Manabu, grabs Neanderstar off of Manabu's shoulder, and Manabu gets swallowed up by the trap, which is just like, a rope trap, so he's suspended upside down the entirety of the duel, which is just so funny, because Yugioh so easily could have grabbed Manabu, and that would have saved Neanderstar as well, and specifically chose only to save Neanderstar. So I do like that rivalry really between the two of them is still on full display here in assumingly the final arc. And the duel commences between Rinkage and Yugioh, and I mean, it's a pretty obvious one, right, that Yugioh was going to win. But as the duel proceeds, we learn more about Rinkage's view of rush duels and the fact that rush duels are even here. And while this episode is airing, a lot of people were wondering, how the hell are rush duels here? My thought was maybe Yugioh went back into the past. Like, somebody had to go back into the past to this timeline to put rush duels here. It was the only thing that makes sense. Obviously, we will learn it in these 6 episodes. But Yugioh ends up ritual summoning again. And I got to tell you, man, every time Yugioh ritual summons, I feel like he changes a little bit. Like, obviously, the obvious change is the anger in the moment. But I'm talking about, like, following the ritual summon. Like, it feels like the ritual is poisoning him almost, where yes, he's showing this insane anger and emotion, but also like afterwards he's starting to like shut down and not talk as much. I'm trying to keep things contained within the episodes, but the point that I'm trying to make is I feel like they might be going down the route where ritual summoning fully corrupts Yugioh, and maybe they need to defeat Yugioh at the end of the show. I do feel like they could be going down that route. And Yugioh, almost looked like he was trying to fight off the ritual as it was happening, but yells out the attack "No Moon," which is hilarious because the moon obviously has so much symbolism in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s and in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. The attack goes through, Rinkage is defeated, and Yugioh picks up the Arc 12 opening win, immediately walks over to Rinkage and demands to be taken to his lord. And even Yugioh is trying to like calm Yugioh down, but Yugioh is just, especially again, right after using the ritual, it feels like has this extra negative anger aura about him that we've never seen prior to him ritual summoning at the end of the 11th arc. And so Rinkage brings Yugioh, Yugioh, Manabu, and Yuumu to his outpost, which is, of course, where Gakugen is. And that concludes episode 140. Ultimately, I thought 140 was a fine arc opening episode. Like, I didn't think it was going to be anything crazy. Usually these arc opening episodes are nothing insane, but I did like that Yugioh's ritual summoned right away, and that anger was still present. And you know who was not present? Kwai'dul. Kwai'dul, quick little note aside, in these opening 6 episodes has not been present at all. And I think something really interesting is, like, at this point in the show, we don't know who the final villain is. We don't know, like, the final, like, obstacle. I mean, I guess it's getting back to the present, but it just feels like there's going to be a bigger obstacle here, and maybe that obstacle will end up being Yugioh. Who knows? And so we get to Gakugen's castle to end episode 140. Episode 141. I'll be honest, I'm really not going to spend too much time on episode 141. I really did not like the episode. The humor that was used really throughout the episode is one of the only types of humor that, like, makes me physically cringe. I really am not a fan of toilet humor at all. I know humor is very subjective, so I'm trying not to be too negative on it. But if I'm just being honest with you guys, throughout this episode, I kind of browned out while watching it. What I mean by that is I didn't black out, like, I still remember parts of it. I probably couldn't tell you more than 2 minutes of what happened in this episode. Like, sometimes your brain, and this is a very true thing, your brain protects you from very, like, stressful, uncomfortable situations. I don't want to use the word trauma because that's extremely ridiculous when it comes to just, you know, humor. But, like, my brain, I think, protected me because I really only remember, like, the deck out that happened at the end for Manabu to get the win, which I actually thought was a pretty cool way for the duel to end. A very unique way. First time we've had a deck out win since the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime. And I remember, like, that Gakugen's style was like a lockdown style, which is very reminiscent of the style that Gakuto played in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7. So I enjoyed that. But as for Gakugen's character, I was very disappointed with the route that it went because I thought, like, he was going to be this cool dude, and he's just a clown, man. He's just a clown, and, you know, I don't really think I can say much more about the episode. I don't really remember a lot of it. I really browned out during it. And there's probably some pretty important things that you can take for Manabu and for the Sogetsu style. But when it comes to, like, the main plot line, Yugioh's anger, who the threat's going to be, the Otai Usu character that we are going to get to in the next episode, when it comes to all that stuff, I don't think there's anything that you need to see in this episode. And if you don't really care about Sogetsu and don't want to sit through, you know, 20 minutes of toilet jokes, then you can probably just skip it. And I would never tell you to skip it out. I mean, even the recaps and Vrains, you can go back and watch those reviews. I would never tell you to skip those. And, you know, you probably should watch this, to be fair, but it really is just, it was hard for me to keep focused on it. Like, I couldn't physically stay focused on it. I just kept watching the clock in the top left, and I was like, thank God this episode released with 4 more episodes to go. And the 4 episodes that are after this, I think, are the 4 strongest of the 6, which is good. You want the episodes to just get better and better. But yeah, if you're wondering why the 141 block is so small in this suite of reviews, that's why. I just couldn't do it, man. I'm sorry. I couldn't do it. And yeah, we're just going to move on to 142. Episode 142, Yugioh and Yugioh tag team finally. Now, Yugioh and Yugioh have had a really interesting relationship. They had that amazing, you know, scene at the end of season 1, that amazing duel. I still think it's one of the best duels of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. But since then, you know, Yugioh, really this season more than season 2, has been on a very, like, weird path. Like, I haven't loved what they've done with Yugioh this season. In this arc, Like, I'm happy he's gotten a duel, and I'm happy that he's kind of becoming, like, the voice for Yugioh and is, like, kind of acknowledging, like, almost Yugioh as the leader when clearly he was the leader back when they fought, you know, in the Valgyrian War. So I like that he has kind of accepted the role reversal here in this arc so far. But Yugioh has still been kind of weird. But it's nice to see these two working together, tag dueling. I think the only thing I would have liked to see more out of this episode is Yugioh and Yugioh having more direct communication. I feel like a lot of times, and maybe it's because they're just trying to fit rush duels in a one episode period, I feel like a lot of times there's not a lot of communication and like trash talking or praise between characters in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's and in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush in the middle of these duels. And again, it could be because they only have one episode to fit the duels in, so most of the interactions and dialogue have to be for the duels, which I do get. But the Princess of Beasts is someone that Lord Otai Usu, who is like the ruler of the land, is against. Otai Usu was chopping down wood, chopping down the forest. The Princess of Beasts showed up. She was not happy about it, and, you know, felt bad for deforestation reasons. Where are the animals going to go? Very, very understandable. The Princess of Beasts, of course, is Epoch. And we also get the reintroduction of Yuhi. So Epoch and Yuhi finally show up. We knew that Epoch was going to be involved in this arc. The last time we saw her, she disappeared after, ironically, dueling Yuhi Otis in one of the 130s, I forget which one it was, after Yuhi became Otis and went through the time machine, and we literally didn't know what would happen to her. Well, Jump Festa 2 months ago did confirm that her, along with Go Hyuna, would be back in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush here in the final arc, and she shows up. Her, Udius, Yuhi, Yuumu all have very, very good reunion scenes. I actually thought the reunion between these characters was one of my favorite things about these 6 episodes. I really, really liked it a lot. And something else that I have enjoyed, listen, there's a lot of blame to go around. You know, what Yuumu did, what Yuhi did, what Yuna did. Like, there are a lot of things that, like, you can kind of point fingers at and say, well, this person's mostly at fault. This person's mostly at fault. This person's 100% at fault. This person's at fault. Yugioh, right? Yugioh stood there and did nothing and just kind of went along with whatever the Dark Meister wanted to do. And Udius actually had an outburst about that on Yugioh, I believe, in 140. So there's a lot of finger pointing that you can do. But the one thing for me is if a character is showing remorse, especially someone who's so young, right? Yuumu and Yuhi are so young. If they're showing remorse, it's very easy for me to kind of sympathize with them. It's like, listen, when we grow and make decisions, we are going to make mistakes. I look back at some decisions I made when I was 16, 17 years old, older than the twins, by the way, and I'm like, man, that was a terrible decision that I really, really, really regret. You know, as you get older, that's just something that happens. When you can show regret for your actions, I think it's easier to sympathize. I'm not saying you need to, 100% outright forgive, and it's like, oh, it's fine. But, like, it's easier to sympathize if they are showing genuine regret. Yuumu clearly has this entire time. Yuhi, who I don't blame as much, he's also shown regret. Yugioh has just kind of stood there. He's like, oh, I don't really care. Yuna is the one that I think is more reprehensible because she's played into it, right? I mean, she has shown no sense of like actual regret, and she has not taken any actions in order to try to gain forgiveness from anyone. Maybe she's shown a little bit of regret like in her inner monologue, but she's fine playing that villain role as we saw at the end of the 11th arc. And I think that's why it's so easy to hate her, but I think it's why it makes her such a compelling character. So anyway, the story of this episode is Udius wants to meet Otai Usu. Epoch is totally against it, hates him for the deforestation stuff, and says, if you want to meet him, then you're against me. Let's duel to see what happens. Udius and Yugioh versus Epoch and Yuhi, her number 1 employee. And the duel actually was really, really good. Yuhi had a pretty quick turn. I think Yuhi honestly probably had the worst turn of the 4. He also went first, so it's hard to have a great turn per se when you're going first and you're setting the stage and you can't really attack your opponent. Yugioh's turn was solid, but I thought Epoch and Udius, man, their turns were something out of a storybook. I mean, Epoc's turn was incredible, and I loved also the symbolic growth of what she did in this duel. You know, early on, Epoch manipulated the dice by cheating, right? She was in that big dice block, and she would move it, and she would clearly cheat. Well, now she's using effects that let her literally pick what number she wants to show up on the dice. And I feel like that shows her growth from a scared, timid girl who would have to cheat her way to manipulate the numbers. Now a confident leader here, the Princess of Beasts, who is able to use card effects to manipulate the numbers legally in a dual sense instead of cheating. So Epoch is a character that I didn't really like all that much when she first debuted, if I'm being honest with you, but I think she might be like my most improved character. I really have come to appreciate and enjoy Epoch. I think she has maybe even surpassed Tiger, to be honest with you. Like, I think she is such a fun character to watch, and have seen the growth in her. It's really cool. But of course, the turn that you got to talk about is Yugioh's. We finally get a fusion summon between Requiem and Oblivion. Now, we knew this fusion summon was coming because around the time when Jump Festa was airing in December, we knew that Yugioh and Yugioh got a fusion monster together. Now, I thought it was going to be round 5. I thought someone was going to use this when the two of them dueled together. Maybe Yugioh to try to get Yugioh like back to his senses if Yugioh was like too far gone. But as soon as the two of them tag dueled, I was like, all right, here's where we're seeing Chaos Oblivion. And we do. Galactica, Chaos Oblivion. But then what Yugioh does is crazy. Instead of destroying Yuhi's trap, he destroys the equip spell. Everybody's confused, and Yuhi's like, oh, he must want to gamble. So Yugioh declares his attack. Yuhi activates his coin flip effect. He gets the flip he wants, and Yugioh's monster loses 1,000 attack. But then the other effect of Chaos Oblivion, if you control no spell or trap cards, my monster gains 1,500 attack. And because the equip spell was destroyed, and because the trap card is now gone after its activation, Chaos Oblivion gains a net of 500 attack points, which is enough to win the duel and beat Yuhi. An incredible big brain play from Yugioh. And after the duel, Yugioh just walks over to Epoch and Yuhi, and this is what he does now, man. After the duels, we're seeing like, it's not like ruthless, but an unsympathetic Yugioh walking over to the duelists he's beaten. We saw it with Rinkage. Walks over to Epoch and Yuhi, calls them his subordinates, says you must return the forest, and walks away. And even Yuhi's like, you know, let's keep an eye on him. Like, I don't know what's going on with him. And everybody, after every duel, it feels like Yugioh changes a little bit, and everybody is concerned. And of course, this episode ends at Otai Usu's castle, and we learn more about Otai Usu in the next episode. But 142, I said it at the time, I thought was a much needed bounce back episode after the disaster that I thought 141 was with Gakugen. But from the main plot perspective, which again, I didn't think 141 progressed all that much, I thought this episode was great. Seeing Epoch again was wonderful. Seeing Yuhi again was great. And then, of course, Yugioh and Yugioh finally tag teaming. Really cool. So 142, I thought was a really good episode. There is one other thing I want to touch on, and that is what happens to Yugioh after this duel ends. Yugioh walks away, and Yugioh begins kind of clutching his heart and has what can only be described as a vision of him and Requiem being destroyed, an explosion on the moon, and it seems like Yugioh has some sort of revelation. Now, my theory on this is Yugioh is seeing his own death. I think that something really bad is going to happen to Yugioh, and I think he saw it because he tag teamed with Yugioh. I just, again, they're throwing these little niblets at you that like are going to, I think, evolve into something really, really big. And I think it all has to do with the path that Yugioh is going down. So certainly a very scary scene if you're a Yugioh fan there. And I don't want to see him die again, but whatever is going to happen to Yugioh, it's not good. And I can't help but think it has to do with what's going on with Yugioh. Episode 143, and we finally get an answer to a question that I have wanted for the longest freaking time. Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's ended. I'll take you back. We're going way back. Yugioh versus Otis. The hyperspace happened. The two of them vanished. Yugioh went back to Yuhi and Yuumu's time period. My question was always, well, where is Otis? And the meme was always, he burnt up in the hyperspace. That was always the meme. For 143 episodes, that was the meme. And the answer that some people believed, oh, he died in the hyperspace, would have made no sense. I'm sorry, it just would have made no sense. We needed something on Otis's character from Sevens. What happened to him? And I felt like death would have been a really cheap way to do it. Well, no, here we go. Otai Usu is the same Otis from Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's. One of the most important questions that I've had ever since Yugioh was shown to be in this world finally gets answered like 110 episodes later. Better late than never, right? Yugioh and crew just directly ask him. Like, Yugioh is just so blunt nowadays, man. It's crazy. It reminds me, there's a few things it reminds me of. When he goes crazy from the ritual summoning, it reminds me of Berserk Yuya from Arc 5. The bluntness that he has reminds me of Season 4 Judai in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. And when you watch the first two seasons of Judai and then Season 4, it's night and day. I mean, I almost feel that way with Yugioh. Like, the first 10 arcs of Yugioh and this arc feels night and day. Like, just so blunt, so straightforward. And so Otis confirms that in the hyperspace, he went back to this world, and he actually suffered major PTSD. He was thrown into the war-torn Sengaku period, probably one of the worst periods of time that you could be thrown back into, and he had to watch all this violence and death, and like literal death. Like, this is not like, oh, getting carded. Like, this is actual death. He says, the sounds of swords clashing and people dying in the crossfire remain in my ears, unable to be silenced. And he just lost his mind. And listen, Otis was a little crazy in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's. So for Otis then to go back and have to witness all this, like, uncivil brutality between these two sides, you know, at least me, I'm sure most people won't, but I do actually feel bad for him. I do. And it's something that I think Yugioh and Yugioh can relate to. In fact, Yugioh thinks about the Valkyrian time period and thinks about like how it came to an end. Well, it came to an end because of rush duels. And Otis says, I introduced rush duels here because we could do battle through dueling instead of through swords and arrows and bloodshed. And when you put it like that, it's like, all right, that's great. Otis did exactly what Yugioh did. Otis did the same thing that Yugioh did, except Yugioh wanted to bring peace. Otis just wanted to, I guess, weed out the losers. And that's the difference. And we didn't know that at this point. So Yugioh says, my views do not differ as yours. I think we have the same exact viewpoint on using rush dueling to do war and do battle instead of bloodshed and swords and, traditional battle. But again, Otai Usu, we learn, for everybody that loses, they're captured and then they're going to be sent to the moon on a rocket that has not actually been tested to go to the moon. And, when we learn that at the end of this episode, it's like, all right, that's the difference. That's the difference, right? Like, there have always been parallels, I felt, between Yugioh and Otis. Even going back to Sevens, right? Like, they're both wholly responsible for the installation of rush dueling. Otis was a big proponent of installing rush dueling. Yugioh was a big proponent of, obviously, he was the creator. He was creating rush dueling. But then it became like, okay, there were clearly two different routes these characters wanted to go. And then by the end of Sevens, Otis wanted to destroy it, which doesn't really make all that much sense. You know, there's still a lot of Otis question marks that we have. And even though he's back in this show, unfortunately, I don't feel like we got any of those question marks answered. So, like, I was excited that he's come back, but we're 3 episodes in and there's a lot still to know. Hopefully we do get them answered. The duel of the episode is also a pretty weird one. The 4 Dark Men are Otis's servants, and they're dueling Rovian and Lug, and Phaser and Tremolo, but Phaser and Tremolo from the past. Like, it's not actually Phaser and Tremolo. It's their ancestors, if you will. But Rovian and Lug, it's actually them. And so they split up into 2v2 duels. Rovian and Lug, great to see them work together. Great to see them pick up a win. They beat Zayat and Fukamura. And Sabuus and Bruyere beat Phaser and Tremolo's ancestors. And so it's 1-1. But then Otis goes, well, we'll determine it not by a third duel, but by which team had the most life points. And I'm just watching like, is this guy kidding me? I mean, this reminded me of Duelist Kingdom. We're just making crap up now. Like, that wasn't stated before the duel or anything. And because Sabuus and Bruyere had more life points than Rovian and the Lug, well, guess what? Otis wins, the Dark Men win, and he says that the losers will be sent in a rocket to the moon, which is, you know, psychotic. But I want to talk about the Dark Men a little bit. Very weird. Very weird. The 3 Dark Men, Zayat, Fukamura, and Sabuus, have all totally lost their memories. They have no memories anymore. But somehow, Bruyere, the mommy guy, still has his full memories of everything that happened. I don't know if it's because his love for Yugioh, like his true love for her, is maybe what, like, kept his memories intact. I don't know if, like, I don't know. It's just weird that 3 of them, I don't think that was ever explained in the episode, that 3 of them lost their memories, but he has not. And I will say, Bruyere in these 3 episodes, 143 and 44-45, I actually liked a lot. He was, you know, my least favorite Dark Man. I think he was a lot of people's least favorite Dark Man, but he had some great development in these episodes. And, you know, when he's not yelling, "Mama," he's actually, like, pretty enjoyable. And I felt he was very easy to root for, and you feel very, like, empathetic for him as he's explaining the plight here, that he has all these memories, but none of his other siblings have their memories. Like, I thought it actually worked really, really well. So shout out to, I didn't think I'd ever say this in an episode review, but shout out to Bruyere. Like, he actually had some really, really good development here, which I definitely appreciated. And so, yeah, the episode ends, of course, with Otis finally confirming that he is indeed crazy, talking about how whoever loses will work for him on the surface of the moon. When Yugioh hears that, he realizes that, you know, even though him and Otis have the same theory of doing battle with Rush and not war, you know, the end goal here is just so ridiculously different, and that really enrages Yugioh, and of course we'll see that play out in 144. But 143, big episode for me. So happy that we got an answer to what happened to Otis from Sevens. But the important thing now is getting answers to the questions that we still had regarding Otis from Sevens. And at the moment, through 145, we still don't necessarily have those answers. But he's back, he's here, and there's still time to get answers from Otis. And the fact that he's back means it's possible. So we'll see. But yeah, 143, thought it was another good episode. Episode 144. We get to see Otai Usu, Otis duel once more. Now, Otis, of course, if you didn't watch Sevens, kind of a meme when it comes to dueling. His record's like 0-8 or something ridiculous like that. Never won any of his duels. Now, I've always believed, truly, that a lot of the duels in Sevens he lost purposely in order to manipulate Yugioh and the crew so he could ultimately get to his end goal. And the only time he was actually trying to win was in the final duel against Yugioh, where he did lose and Yugioh defeated him. And that's why we see him use like his actual deck, which is a darkness deck. Well, we do not see the darkness cards in this duel. Instead, and this was actually pointed out to me by a few people in the chat while doing the watch along, Otis uses cards that were from like the crazy worlds that Quaidul visited. He uses cards called Outerverse, and like one of them is from like that painting world with the Valgyrian like Renaissance painter. You have another card that is meant to look like Yugioh, and you even have a Galactica Oblivion card. Like, I'm sorry, but Otis, for as much as people like to hate on him, always plays the coolest freaking decks, whether it's nostalgia, like Blue Eyes White Dragon, Dark Magician, or Summon Skull, whether it's like Darkness Sevens monsters, or now it's like the Outerverse cards. But like, can we take a step back and actually think about this logically? Quaidul visits these other dimensions, and Otis is using cards that resemble the dimensions that Quaidul visited. Like, we need an explanation. Is Otis some, like, insanely powerful deity? Like, this, like, it doesn't make sense from a logic perspective. And it might just end up being, oh, we never got an answer. It means that Otis, you know, is just kind of, it was a cool reference. And I'm like, yeah, but you know what? You have the potential to do something much deeper than a cool reference. Like, if Otis is some sort of, like, all-powerful deity and is able to know that Quaidul went to these worlds and used monsters purposely from these worlds that he showed Yugioh when Yugioh was performing the ritual in order to kind of like try to get under Yugioh's skin and rile Yugioh up, I think that would be like great storytelling. Like, I still feel, and maybe I'm one of the only people that still honestly feels this way, and if I am, I get it, because it's been like 230 episodes, man, so I get it. I still feel like there is really good potential to make Otis like a somewhat compelling villain. And I know the argument will be, well, it took 240 episodes to get there, and I get that. But, like, listen, we're here, we're in the now. Like, I still think there are weird things that are going on with Otis. And if you made him, you know, I know a lot of the theory is, oh, what if he's a different Yugioh? Oh, what if he's a different Yugioh? Oh, what if maybe he's like a different Quaidul? I think those could work. But even if you made him some like all-powerful god that was trying to like manipulate things and successfully, and Quaidul also manipulated things in this show. That's why I mentioned Quaidul's name when saying who could like this Otis be. Like, I think it would actually work. Like, remember, Otis gave Yugioh the Seven's Road cards. Otis now has like a version of Galactica Oblivion and all these Outerverse monsters that represent the universes that he showed Yugioh. Like, I'm sorry, but there's something compelling that you can do there. I really do think that. There's something compelling that you can do. And Otis puts up a good fight in this duel. By the way, if Yugioh loses, he agrees to be sent to the moon to work for Otis forever, along with all of his friends, right? His friends walked in. I feel like the old Yugioh would not have put his friends' lives on the line as easily as this Yugioh did. This Yugioh was like, yeah, whatever. Like, I'm not going to lose, so it doesn't matter. And I'm like, geez, that's going to get you in trouble one day, Yugioh. But he accepts the duel. And again, the duel commences. Otis uses these Outerverse cards, uses like a version of Seifert, uses a version of Oblivion. The monster looks like Yugioh when it's like glowed up because of the field spell. It's actually a really good duel. Like, I loved the deck that Otis was using, and I loved the symbolism of the deck that Otis was using. And then, of course, Yugioh draws the ritual and has to use the ritual in order to win the duel. So we see Yugioh perform what I'm going to be referring to as a very dangerous ritual for the second time this arc, the third time in this show. And thanks to using the ritual, he is able to defeat Otis. And if you're wondering, it is the same thing. It's Diskarma Ritual. It's Diskarma Transamu Rhynek. Like, it's the same card in Monsters. I don't know if we're going to see a new ritual card. But I love it because when the ritual is used, Yuhi's like, what the hell is that? And Yuumu just very sadly says, Yugioh is no longer the Yugioh that you used to know. And when I hear characters say that and express concern and at the same time see Yugioh's like enraged anger, I just can't help but worry. Again, I said it during the 140 part of the review that Yugioh is going to cross a line and he's going to like lose his mind and he's going to be the one that needs to be stopped at the end of this show. Like I could totally see them going down this reaction. What I thought was interesting, Otis had zero reaction to the ritual. Otis was not shocked by it. He was not surprised by it. He had zero reaction. And again, he's got these Outerverse monsters that resemble the universe that Quaidul visited, the universes that Quaidul visited and showed Yugioh. So of course he's not surprised by the ritual. Otis knows about the ritual. Like there's just gotta be something there with Otis's character. It makes so much sense. I still think there is so much potential. And Yugioh, of course, goes on to win. Because, well, one, it's Yugioh. He's a good duelist. Two, it's Otis. He's a terrible duelist. And Otis is arrested. And Yugioh, without Yugioh even saying a word, declares Yugioh as the winner. And you know something really creepy? Yugioh does not say a word after the duel. And in 145, he's shown in the very beginning wearing the samurai outfit. Does not say a word in the beginning of 145 when Yuumu and Yuhi were trying to talk to him. This ritual is changing him, man. I do not like what is happening to Yugioh. I do not like what he is becoming. And I am very, very afraid that he is going to be a major, major problem for our crew come the end of this show, which of course is fast approaching. But Yugioh, again, it just seems like every time he ritual summons, every time he plays that card, a part of him dies and he changes. And now he seems completely shut off from everyone, including Yuhi and Yuumu, his two dearest friends. So 144, I thought personally was the best episode of these 6. 145 is probably second best, which we're going to get into, but I really loved 144, and I hope and I'm pretty confident Otis will be back. We need, I mean, him using these Outerverse monsters, dude, we need more explanation on Otis, and I think it all stems from the question, who is Otis? Whether it's a different Yugioh, whether it's a different Yugioh, a different Quaidul, some insanely powerful, all-knowing deity. Like, I just don't believe that Otis is some dude. Like, especially using these cards. I just don't. You gotta give me more here. You have to. And I really hope they do. 144, very, very good episode. Episode 145, a duel that is hard to explain if you didn't watch the episode. Kawaitel cosplays as Yuumu, and Yuumu writes out the instructions on how to duel Asaka, and is somehow able to, like, get a note over to the two of them using, I think, the power of time travel, but I don't really understand how. Also, Kuyamuya, the cat that died at the end of 139, is back, inexplicably so. Like, that's literally not explained at all. The cat very clearly died at the end of 139, so a lot of weird things. And, you know, I will say this. Whenever you have a story that time travel is a major element of, there's a lot of weird, like, it can just get very confusing. It can get very confusing. But I do like that this episode, 6 episodes in, finally showed us, well, what happened and what's going on in the present day of Go Rush. And we see Asaka, and she's probably the most important character that was not taken by the machine. And Asaka is wondering, why was she left behind? Almost having a little bit of, like, survivor's guilt, feeling a little inferior, not understanding why she was not taken by the machine. Very upset by it, very lonely, understandable. And so Yuumu and Yuhi, the episode starts with them talking to Yugioh, trying to talk to him at least, trying to figure out how to return to their own time. But they're really talking through Yugioh. Like, they're all staring into the distance at where Matsuba Town is going to be built in the future. But Yugioh, again, is just silent. I think he says, like, one line where he says, development, was it? I think that's the only line he says. So I know I said at the end of 144, he hasn't said a word. I was wrong on that. I watched back. He said one line, but still really not talking. And he was a very, very talkative person. Yuumu believes she's figured it out. She runs off and she goes to the ruins of where the prototype dual disc plant was and realizes that Asaka was not sent into the past. And so she gets letters and the Sengaku era dual disc to Asaka and Kawai Tell. Again, how this works, I don't really know. I guess because she put it there, I don't know. That part I'm not going to try to explain. Maybe people in the comments who understand time travel can explain it a little better. But Yuumu writes to Asaka and says, we need to commence a duel. And you need to fix the time machine so we can get back. Kawai Tell very quickly turns into Yuumu, literally cosplays as Yuumu. It's one of the, I actually thought it was hilarious. I know a lot of people found it disturbing. I thought it was hilarious that he was so serious and was cosplaying as Yuumu, and it was the most ridiculous thing ever. But yeah, Kawai Tell is not really dueling. Yuumu has all the instructions written down on a piece of paper. And, I thought this was a great episode for Yuumu. I thought it was a great episode for Asaka as well. Very much like Epoch. She was someone I didn't really love early on in the show. Felt like she didn't really compare at all to Asana, who I was a massive fan of. But Asaka has grown massively on me. And so Yuumu is writing all the instructions down. Kawai Tell is following the instructions. And there were multiple times that Asaka would make moves or would try to overthink plays. But Yuumu every single time knew what she was doing. Every single time Asaka was like, oh, I bet you didn't think I was going to do that. And then we would kind of hear from Yuumu, in her inner monologue, and she was like, nope, I knew you were going to do that, or that's what Asaka would probably do. And then the cat also projects herself as Yuumu, so it does feel like Yuumu is dueling Asaka in the present. And as the duel continues, honestly, the two of them have a very nice moment. I mean, Yuumu says she knows everything about Asaka, that she's always thinking about Matsuba first, and then herself second, and that dueling is the true way that you can see somebody. And Yuumu says that when I duel you, I see you for who you actually are, and I love that version of you. And I know that you are the key to helping all of us. You have the potential to help all of us, and if I have to put my trust in any one person, it's you. Because that's who you truly are. And you will put us ahead of Matsuba because that's who you truly are. And even though on the exterior, you always try to act like you put Matsuba first, you care about me, you care about friends. And I believe in that, Asaka. And Asaka blushes because, it's a very, very nice thing to say. And I think Yuumu honestly said it perfectly. And Asaka does her counterattack. She's like, I can see right through you too. But Yuumu had a trap set, flash memory fusion. We see a fusion of Red Boot and Bluetooth. Freaking awesome, like jet black dragon. And Yuumu ends up getting the win over Asaka. And Asaka learns the purpose of the duel and says, all right, I'm going to fix the time machine and I'm going to save you. So the duel is successful. It conveys the message that Yuumu was trying to get to Asaka. Like, hey, I believe in you. I know you can do it. Fix the time machine. Save us. There's a reason you were left behind. Thank God you were left behind because you're the one that can save us all. So loved the message of the duel. Loved the moment between Yuumu and Asaka. But there was a really, really interesting line. A bunch of them are talking about the time machine, and Asaka questions, how did they all land in the same place and at the same time? It can't be a coincidence. And Kawai Tell says one of the most intriguing lines of all 6 episodes. And it's a line that we will be speculating for probably only a couple more weeks, waiting for the reveal here. Actually, I'm sorry, Asaka says it. So you're saying they were brought together in the same time period by a force that sought to undo the changes of time. That, my friends, has to be one of the major threats that we will be facing at the end. I believe, at least. Or maybe not. Maybe it's a genuine force. But to me, it can only really be 4 people. Yugioh, who has a lot of reasons to want to undo changes of time. Kwai'dul just feels powerful enough to do something like that. Otis, I don't think it's Otis, but who knows. And Gohei Yuna, who I just have to accuse here because we haven't seen her yet, but it wouldn't really make sense because if she undoes the changes of time, she would never meet Yugioh, who she's madly in love with. So I don't think it makes sense for Gohei Yuna to do this unless she like comes from the future and realizes that her and Yugioh truly have no future. And by doing this, maybe she can like wipe her memory of Yugioh and move on with her life that way. I'm not sure. But that is a really, really big line. And that's the line that pretty much ends episode 145 and ends these 6 subbed episodes as we go on to probably the second half of the final arc. So 145, I enjoyed a lot as well. I thought it was the second best episode to 144. And ultimately, these 6 episodes, literally without 141, I thought were really, really good. All of them, besides 141. So I am very excited to see where we go from here. I'm not going to get into the thought on, do I think this show is ending in March? I'm going to do a separate video on that probably tomorrow. I want to keep this discussion within these 6 episodes. And I've been talking for about an hour straight, so I got to probably wrap this up. But I would love to know your thoughts on these episodes. Where do we go from here? And do you like the direction the final arc is going in and has started to go in as we are probably approaching the end of the show? As always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you watched one episode, if you watched all of them, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you all so much. I'll talk to you in the comments, and I hope you have an amazing day. Take care, guys.